Hey, this is Dan from Loading from Loops podcast, and today we have retired Officer Chris Jones with us. Chris, how you doing today?
Well, doing very well, thank you.
I hear you have a story to tell us about some incident from your illustrious career as a police officer.
This is a short story that was quite amusing, in my humble opinion. I had pulled back into the back of the station in a small southern town, which I will not name because I would rather not be specific if you get my drift.
Well, is the statute of limitations still in play? That's what I want to know.
I think we're good to go on that. And as I pulled, it was a Saturday or a Sunday, I pulled in the back of the station, and there were 5 or 6 spots where it said police cars only, which everyone was pretty adamant about protecting those spots. And I pulled in, and there was a trailblazer that did not belong to the police department parked in one of those spots. So I telephoned 911 and asked who belonged to that trailblazer, and found out it was the mayor,
Hmm.
who was kind of a codsack, to be gentle. So I said, well, I can't write him a ticket, but I did the next best thing. I called my friend Marty Esberg, who worked for the local newspaper, and he was a photographer. Marty came over and took a picture of the car, knowing full well who it belonged to, and it was on the front page of the next
Ooh.
newspaper. I think to this day, the former mayor still is, well, he's fairly sure he knows who did it, but he could never prove it, which was just as well. Anyway, that's my sort of funny. That was one of the funnier things that I've done in my career.
Well, you know, these politicians have a lot of influence, but they shouldn't mess with the police department, in the end.
He he was very enamored with his position. He later on he lived across the street from a house where the people had both passed away.
Oh.
And in that house was a chandelier that he really wanted. He had his own bed and breakfast, and he decided he wanted this chandelier, and he went over to the house, and he spoke to one of the heirs of the house, of the family that had the house. And he said, I'd really like to buy the chandelier. And they said, right now it's all tied up in probate. A few days later, there was a burglary at that house, and the chandelier was stolen. Now, I have no idea who did the burglary, but of course, our department investigated it. And strangely enough, he ended up with a chandelier in his possession. So when he was approached, he said, well, I bought it from an antique dealer. So they went to the antique dealer, who knew nothing. I mean, he just was like, well, I don't know. Now, once he was informed that this was stolen property, his obligation is to return it, which he never did. I thought a nice arrest for possession of stolen property was definitely in order. At this time, he knew it was stolen. I don't care if he bought it legitimately or illegitimately or how he bought it, but it was stolen. But that's the kind of stuff you have to deal with all the time in a small area. So it was what it was.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough to process that kind of stuff actually happens. But you know what? Those are usually the first guys who are out pointing fingers at the police officers.
Always.
Always. Never.
Always.
All right. Well, I think I thank you, Chris, for calling in and reporting in with a story. We're going to have quite a few more, and I hope you'll come back with a different news story very soon.
I will definitely speak to you about my last case at that same department, which is extremely serious. I think I've maybe written to you about it before, but it's something that should be shared. And because I am a New York expat, or whatever you want to call me, I'm a Yankee. Uh, it it was solved, and it was solved because of information that I gave them, but the credit went elsewhere. We'll talk about it another time.
Sounds good. Everybody will be looking forward to hearing it. All right. Thanks, Chris.
All right, great talking to you, Dan.
Loading from Loops is brought to you by Sabbath Learning. Register now for the Excellence in Law Enforcement courses. Click the link below for more information.